We didn't come here to talk. We came to end this, one way or another.
Then understand this. Iran doesn't end. Empires do.
You think you can win this?
We don't need to win. We just need you to lose.
Tehran is alive. The streets are full of music, debate, and hope. Iranian students are reading Western philosophy. Jazz is playing in cafes. Women are walking freely in universities. And here is the part that will shock you. Iran's prime minister was so popular, so respected, that Time magazine named him Person of the Year. Not in Iran, in America. The Iranian people genuinely admired the United States. They saw America as the country that defeated colonialism, that believed in democracy, that stood against the old European empires that had been stealing from the developing world for centuries. Iran and America were not enemies. They were something very close to friends. So I need you to answer one question before this video goes any further. How does a friendship this strong, built over decades, turn into 70 years of pure hatred? How does "I admire America" become "Death to America"? A slogan so deeply burned into a nation's identity that children learn it before they learn mathematics. And most importantly, who is actually responsible? Because the answer is not what your news channel told you. It is not what your history textbook said. And it will completely change how you see every single conflict happening in the Middle East right now in 2026. Stay with me until the end, because the last thing I tell you in this video will make you question everything you thought you knew about American foreign policy.
But before I take you into this story canon, I want to tell you something right now that I will only reveal at the very end of this video.
There was one room, one night, one signature, and that single moment made Iran America's enemy forever. Stay with me, because when we get there, everything will click.
After World War II, the entire world was rebuilding. Old empires were falling apart. New nations were trying to find their identity. And in the middle of all this chaos, Iran was doing something remarkable. It was building a real democracy. They had a functioning parliament called the Majlis. They had opposition parties. They had newspapers that criticized the government openly. For the Middle East in the 1950s, this was almost unheard of. And leading this democratic experiment was Mohammad Mossadegh. Now, Mossadegh was a strange man. He gave speeches while crying real tears. He held important meetings while lying in bed in his pajamas. He was old, frail, and looked like someone's grandfather who had wandered into a political rally by accident. But Iranians loved him, completely and absolutely. Because he said one thing that every Iranian had been waiting decades to hear. He said, Iran's oil belongs to Iran, not to the British Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which was pumping billions of dollars worth of Iranian oil every single year and giving Iran almost nothing in return, not to foreign shareholders sitting in comfortable London offices, to the Iranian people, to the workers, to the nation. In 1951, Mossadegh nationalized Iranian oil. The parliament voted for it unanimously. Crowds celebrated in every city. It was completely legal under international law. Britain lost their minds. They called it theft. They called Mossadegh a communist, which was the 1950s way of calling someone a terrorist. They put massive sanctions on Iran, blocking oil exports, strangling the economy. And then Britain went to Washington with a request. Help us remove this man. And Washington, tragically, catastrophically, said yes.
Now here is where it gets dark. What I'm about to tell you, America lied about this for 60 years.
The CIA only officially admitted it in 2013, but what they still haven't admitted, that's what I'm telling you right now.
President Eisenhower approved Operation Ajax in 1953. It was a joint CIA and British intelligence operation with one clear objective: to remove Mossadegh's government and restore the Shah's authority. It was not a direct military invasion. It was a covert political operation. CIA-linked networks worked with Iranian contacts, newspaper editors, political figures, and street groups to shape public opinion against Mossadegh. Newspapers published stories questioning his leadership. Street demonstrations increased. Rumors spread across the country. The political environment became unstable, and a government that had once looked popular began to appear divided and vulnerable from the inside. And then, on August 19, 1953, crowds filled the streets. Parts of the military shifted their support. Government buildings were attacked. Within hours, the balance of power had changed. Mossadegh was arrested. He was taken from his home and later put on trial. To his supporters, he was the man who tried to make Iran's oil belong to Iran. To his opponents, he had created a crisis that threatened the state. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. After that, he spent the rest of his life under house arrest. He died without returning to public life again. The Shah returned to power, and from that moment, Iran's political direction changed completely. The monarchy became closely aligned with the United States and Britain. Western oil interests were protected. In return, Iran became one of Washington's most important allies in the Middle East. What followed was 26 years of centralized rule under the Shah. His government modernized parts of Iran, expanded education, developed infrastructure, and built a strong military. But at the same time, political opposition was heavily restricted. The Shah's secret police, Savak, monitored opponents of the government. Political activists were arrested, prisoners were interrogated, some disappeared. Many Iranians believed that speaking openly against the state could cost them their freedom. Savak received training and support from Western intelligence services, including the CIA. For many Iranians, this made the Shah's government feel not only powerful, but protected from outside. This is the foundation. Remember this, because everything that comes after builds on this moment.
By 1979, 26 years of anger, pressure, and political frustration had reached its breaking point. The Iranian Revolution was not simply an Islamic movement. That is the simplified version many people know. The reality was more complicated. The revolution brought together people who had very different beliefs. Secular university students marched alongside religious clerics. Left-wing workers stood next to bazaar merchants. Women who wore hijab and women who did not all appeared in the same streets, shouting against the same government. What united them was not one ideology. It was opposition to the Shah. It was frustration with political repression. It was anger toward foreign influence in Iran's internal affairs. Ayatollah Khomeini did not create all of this anger, but he became the figure who gave it direction, language, and leadership. When the revolution succeeded and the Shah left Iran, the celebration in Tehran was real. Millions of people felt they had finally ended a system that had ruled their lives for decades. But then, another event deepened the crisis. The United States allowed the Shah to enter America for medical treatment. From Washington's point of view, it was a humanitarian decision for a former ally, but many Iranians saw it differently. To them, this was the same Shah whose government had imprisoned and tortured political opponents.
They feared America might help him return to power again, just like in 1953. On November 4, 1979, Iranian students stormed the American embassy and took 52 Americans hostage. 444 days. America tried a rescue mission, Operation Eagle Claw, but the mission failed in the Iranian desert. Helicopters crashed. 8 American soldiers died. For the United States, it was a national humiliation. For revolutionary Iran, it became a symbol that the old balance of power had changed. The world watched, and Iran felt something it had not felt in decades: power.
So where does all of this leave us today, in 2026? There is a ceasefire. There are negotiations happening right now. But I'm going to tell you the truth, that no diplomat will ever say publicly.
Today, America and Iran are not just two countries with political differences. They are two nations shaped by decades of mistrust. Iran remembers the 1953 coup, support for the Shah, sanctions, war, and pressure. America sees Iran through revolution, hostage crisis, regional conflicts, and nuclear concerns. Over time, both sides stopped seeing each other as possible partners and started seeing each other as permanent threats. That is why Iran moved closer to China and Russia, and that is why America's influence in Tehran kept fading. This rivalry was not created in one day. It was built slowly, decision by decision, crisis by crisis. So the real question is simple. If the 1953 coup had never happened, would America and Iran still have become enemies? Nobody knows for sure, but one thing is clear. History still shapes everything happening today. Comment your thoughts and subscribe for the next story.